I still have goosebumps thinking about what happened to me in 2019. I was 22, thrilled to be starting anew in France, working as an au pair for the Moreau family. They were rich, lived in a lovely country house, and had a 5-year-old son, Julien. The wages were excellent, the house gorgeous, and the Moreaus seemed like the perfect employees. At first, I awoke my first night there to the creaking of feet outside my room. They moved slowly. I initially thought it was Julien rising to use the restroom, but I looked out and saw nothing. The house was perfectly quiet. The following morning over breakfast, I questioned Julien innocently as to whether he had been up late the night before. His spoon froze halfway to his mouth. Then, whispering softly, he said something that made the hairs on my neck stand up. "She watches you too." I laughed hysterically. "Who is watching me?" Julien turned pale. His tiny hand clung to the side of the table. "The girl before you." My stomach twisted. As far as I could remember, I was the first au pair the Moreaus had ever employed. That evening I shut my bedroom door, but the footsteps were still audible. Deliberate, marching past my door. I kept trying to convince myself that it was nothing. Old houses creak right, but I knew in my gut that something was not right. I began to notice things in the days that followed. Scratch marks on the walls near the door to the basement. Too deep, too jagged to be accidents. I caught Julien staring at them one afternoon. His little fingers ran over the scratches. She tried to leave. They wouldn't allow her. My heart was in my throat. "Who?" I said. Julien's lips were trembling. He stared up at me with frightened eyes. "Emily." The saying of my name sent shivers down my spine. I lay awake the rest of that night, replaying in my mind everything. Who was Emily then? And why did Julien sound so afraid? The Moreaus never mentioned any previous au pair. I needed to find out what actually was the truth. One night while the Moreaus were dining out, I decided to search the house. The basement door was locked, but there was a small key secreted in one of the kitchen drawers. My fingers shook as I put it into the lock. The creaking door swung open and a dark, musty stairway went down. The air was stale, as if something had been allowed to rot. I got out my phone and activated the flashlight. That is when I noticed that a dirty old suitcase wedged into the corner. I paused as I opened it. My stomach turned over as I removed its contents. Women's attire, a passport, a journal. The passport was for Emily Clark, a 23-year-old woman from Britain. I riffled through the book quickly, my hands trembling. I hear sounds at midnight. I feel eyes on me. The Moreaus aren't what they seem. And finally, the last entry. They won't release me. I think that they understand that I know what actually happens. A lump in my throat. I flung the diary shut, my breath coming in short spurts. Emily was no longer there. I must get out. Now. That evening I accused Mrs. Moreau of something at supper. My voice trembled. "What did you do to Emily?" She and her husband looked at each other, and then, grinning with cold, wicked intent, she added, "Emily was disobedient. We had to discipline her. I had been struck in the stomach. I had to calm down, act like nothing was wrong." I excused myself quickly and walked up the second floor, began packing. I was gone, but when I finished cinching my pack, the floor creaked somewhere behind me. I turned. Mr. Moreau was standing there in the doorway, a neutral face on his. Going somewhere. I don't know what came next. Only pieces and fragments, struggling blackness, voices in my ear. The next morning I woke up in my own bed with sore wrists that had been tied. The room was black. The house was quiet. I wanted to scream, but the terror froze me. I wasn't safe. I had to get out before I'd be like Emily. The following morning I pretended to have a headache, telling Mrs. Moreau that I needed to go out into the fresh air. I told her that I would like to take a stroll around the gardens. She refused at first, but finally agreed. The moment I got outside, I ran. I did not stop until I arrived in the closest town, panting and bursting into a small cafe where I pleaded with them to allow me to use the phone. I phoned the police and explained to them what had occurred. They searched the house of Moreau and discovered a secret room in the basement. They discovered a mattress, chains, and blood on the inside. Emily had never left. The Moreaus were captured, but to this day Emily's body has not been found, and I still hear footsteps at night.